this week's lesson, we're going to be taking a look at converting an existing garden bed into a no-till garden. Now, when you're doing this conversion, the good news is that you don't have to rip up very much more earth or really do a whole lot to your current garden. Essentially, what we're going to be doing is layering things on top to basically create a situation where it's going to mimic what a natural forest floor does the decomposition on its own, and creates beautiful fluffy soil without you having to do a whole lot of work. So essentially when we're doing this, we're going to be taking an already existing garden plot. So I'm assuming that there isn't complete lawn in this situation. There may be a little bit of weeds, grass, things coming up, but it wouldn't be the same as a complete lawn per se. So what we're going to be doing is taking your garden plot that you may have tilled or worked with a pitchfork year after year after year, and if you're wanting to convert this into no-till, all I basically do, and it's best to do this in the fall, but really if you want to chip away at this over time, that's absolutely fine too. You can start in the springtime. Ideally, all you really want to do is add a layer of mulch across the entire surface. So this mulch could be wood chips, it could be leaves, it could be branches that are kind of chopped up. Basically, whatever you have available to you can be used as mulch. And this mulch layer, you want to be anywhere from 12 inches to 24 inches, depending on the wind in your area. If it's windier, put more on. If it's very, very exposed and going to dry out easily, put more on. If you're in a nice sheltered backyard that's even a little bit shady, you can probably get away with about 12 inches worth or so. And this can be left for one winter. It can be left for several years like this. It doesn't really matter. You can even do this in the springtime, and then all we're going to do to be able to plant on this surface is we're just going to take this mulch and we're just going to move it away and plant your row of seeds. And once those seedlings start to pop up out of the soil, you just move the mulch a little bit closer back up against them, and that's all you really have to do. So what you're going to be doing over time is creating pockets within this mulch of growing space. Now, this can be linear rows, it can be little horseshoe shapes. You can get creative with it. It doesn't have to be linear, but for the sake of this drawing, I'm going to make it kind of linear. So at first, what's going to happen is you're going to actually have mounds of mulch with your plants basically coming up in between like this in rows. But over time, as you grow these plants and you start to chop them and drop them at the end of every growing season, and you're going to be putting them back down, this soil will build up over time and it will get really lush and beautiful, and you can start adding some compost to it, and year after year these garden mounds are going to build up to the point where they're actually going to be a little bit higher than the mulch areas around them. And the idea behind this, with having the mulch and the soil areas, is that you're going to be walking on the mulch instead of walking on the soil. When you have a no-till garden, the number one thing that you want to know is you do not want to walk on the soil ever. You never want to be stepping on it. You never want to be compacting it. You never want to be driving over top of it. So essentially what you're going to want to do is create paths in between each of the growing areas where you can permanently walk, so that this soil where you're actually growing stays fluffy and beautiful and with lots of air pockets and space for the water to go through and things like that. It doesn't matter if that mulch gets compressed over time, because you're going to just be walking on that area. But that mulch is basically going to act as a weed barrier. It's going to help to keep some moisture in the ground. It's going to help so that over time you're actually going to start to get the fungal connections running through this entire system here. So there's going to be the fungal connections into the ground between your planting areas and your pathways. And if you need to over time, you can always just add a little bit more mulch where you're walking. If weeds start to come through, if the soil starts to kind of wash into the paths or anything like that, you can always just go ahead and add more mulch at that point in time. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you'll just be building this soil over time for more and more and more fertility and growing space, and it's really a pretty slick, efficient system.